Don't blame anybody else. I know it's kind of harsh, but that's reality, right? If you have young kids right now, you better take them to the masjid, right? Take them to some classes. If you can't teach them, find somebody to teach them, right? And there's so many resources available online, but the point is don't just leave them and abandon them, right? So the thing is that, when it comes to this concept of sadaqah in this hadith, it's something that is, it involves benefiting anybody, right? Benefiting anybody. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says that to help somebody, to deal justly between two people who are disputing, to help somebody get up on their animal, أو تحمل له عليها متاعه صدقة, or to help the person get their bags on top of the animal, that's sadaqah. So not only is it sadaqah to help the guy get on his animal, but also to help him with his packages, right? You find somebody that's on the street, they're struggling with their bags of groceries. You ask, hey, can I help you? Can I assist you? Right? Can I help you take the stuff in your house? Right? It's something that's nice. Especially sometimes you see that there's old people on the street, right? They have to lift something, right? So any way that you can help somebody, somebody's lifting a box and they have to come through a door, but you can open the door. That's the example of sadaqah. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he then says, وَالْكَلِمَةُ الطَّيِّبَةُ صَدَقَةٌ, and saying something good is sadaqah. Keep in mind, he didn't say الْكَلِمَةُ الطَّيِّبَةُ إِلَى الْمُسْلِمِ, that a good statement to a Muslim is good. No, just good speech, period, is sadaqah. Whether you're saying it to a Muslim or a kafir, some people, they think that as a Muslim, I can't say anything good to kuffar. But what kind of ignorance is this? How are they going to know about the goodness of Islam if all they see from you is filthiness and evil? Right? How are they going to know about the good of Islam? Right? They're going to, and there are a lot of people, they start to hate Islam just because of the bad characteristics of Muslims. Right? And there's this one brother, he accepted Islam in this masjid a couple of days ago. And I was asking him, why did you accept Islam? Right? He took his shahada here. This was on Saturday. He took his shahada in the masjid on Saturday and then he left. But this brother, I asked him, I'm like, hey, he came to the masjid, all of a sudden we came to the masjid, he was sitting at the front of the masjid, he was waiting for somebody to come. And when they found out why he was here, he said, I'm here to accept Islam. I mean, subhanAllah, within the past 3 days, 2 people have taken their shahada. It's almost like on a weekly basis, people are becoming Muslims. That's why, we have a program coming up called New Leaf. It's a program that involves new reverts. If you know anybody that have accepted Islam, inshallah ta'ala, tell them to register for the program. You can find it on Facebook. It's very important that we kind of have programs that we involve those who, are fresh converts to Islam. Right? You don't want to leave them, because what happens? Muslims were so obsessed with making people Muslim, but not keeping them Muslim. Right? It doesn't make any sense, right? That you're so obsessed. When somebody takes a shahada, then we all forget about him, as if we don't even know the person, right? There's some brothers and sisters, when they want to give da'wah to somebody, they would sit down for hours with a person, explaining them the proofs of Islam and all of this stuff. But when the guy says the shahada, he's left in the dark. What do you think he's going to do? If nobody's teaching him, nobody's involving him, there's no brotherhood, he's reading all of these hadiths about how Islam is supposed to be a religion of brotherhood and sisterhood, but then they're left alone, nobody cares about them, what do you expect they're going to say? So I spoke to this brother, he said, I'm like, why do you want to be a Muslim? So he says that the reason why I want to be a Muslim is because when I didn't have anywhere to sleep, the Muslims, they gave me they sheltered me. When I was hungry, the Muslims fed me. I've seen good things from these people. So you see, people, they accept Islam just by seeing good treatment, just by you giving them that sadaqah of saying something good or helping them. All of that could be a means of da'wah. But then at the same time, some people may look at Islam as ugly and filthy because of your bad character. So imagine this, imagine how scary this is, that somebody rejects Islam because of your bad character. Right? That's shame. Right? That's shame. Nobody wants to be in this situation. Imagine you come on a day of judgment and Allah asks the person, why didn't you accept Islam? And they say, because of this guy's bad character. Allahu a'lam, what would happen? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pardon us. Ameen. But you never know who's watching you. Right? You never know who's watching you, who's looking at you. Sometimes you may help somebody, do sadaqah to them, they don't care about it. But the fact that somebody else, they see, whoa, that guy's wearing a kufi, he's wearing a thobe, she's wearing a hijab, and she's being so nice, whoa, I didn't know about this. You may never even exchange words with the person, but because they see that, they accept Islam. Right? So only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the amount of good that can come just by doing something good. Just by doing something nice, just by doing some sadaqah when it comes to benefiting people. Like we said, it's not just the money. That's not all what sadaqah is. Any benefit that you give to anybody, that's considered sadaqah in Islam. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he then says, وَبِكُلِّ خُطْوَةٍ تَمْشِيهَا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ صَدَقَةٍ. And every step that you take to the masjid, to the salah, is sadaqah. Think about that. When you leave your house and you're walking, and some scholars mention it's better to walk to the masjid. Obviously, if you're able. It doesn't mean that it's bad to drive a car to the masjid. Okay? But you're coming to the masjid, you're walking from your house to the masjid, every step that you take. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that one step you take, you get a level raised in Jannah. You get some level raised in Jannah. And the other step that you take is a sin that's removed from you. Think about how beautiful that is, right? It's basically, it's sadaqah to yourself. You're not benefiting anybody else with this, right? You're benefiting yourself with this. So sadaqah you can give to other people, like judging between two people, right? Being just between people, right? By helping somebody with their bags and the animal and saying something good. These are all examples of transitive sadaqah, right? Transitive sadaqah meaning that it transcends you. It goes to other people, right? And it benefits others. But there's also sadaqah that the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning, and that's a sadaqah that benefits yourself. And in the previous hadith, we saw a bunch of examples of that. Tasbih, saying subhanallah, saying alhamdulillah, saying Allahu Akbar, saying la ilaha illallah. Right? These are all examples of sadaqah. So sadaqah is anything that benefits either you or others. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَتُمِيطُ الْأَذَى عَنِ الطَّرِيقِ صَدَقَةً. And that you remove an obstacle, something that hurts the people, some adha, some harm. You remove some harm from the path, and that's sadaqah. How beautiful of a deen this is, subhanAllah. Just think about that. This deen is not just a deen where you say you're Muslim and then that's it. You want to be grouchy all the time, be nasty all the time. No, that's not what Islam teaches you to be. Islam teaches you to say good things, to help people, to support people, to do whatever good you can. So that's why the believer, wherever the believer is, he's always doing some good. Right? He's always doing some good. Right? He's benefiting people all of the time. So let's just talk about some more benefits of this hadith, inshallah ta'ala, that the scholars mentioned. Now the first, something else that I want to mention is that Islam is a complete deen. Islam involves your entire life. Think about that. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that every joint, there's charity that is due. It's obligatory. You have to fulfill this charity on every single joint in your body. Meaning that you have to use your body to do good. You have to use your body to do the sadaqah. Every single day, right? Basically your whole body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mandating upon you that you worship Him with your whole body. That's why Islam is not just a religion of what you say. It's every joint. Every part of your body, you're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says at the end of Surah Al-An'am, He commands the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by saying, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي, say, indeed my salah, وَنُسُكِي, and my sacrifice, وَمَحْيَايَ, and my whole life, وَمَمَاتِي, and my death, لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, is for Allah, the Rabb, the Lord, the Master of everything that exists besides Him. Everything that exists besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is His creation. There's nothing besides Allah Azza wa Jalla that's created. Right? We don't believe as Muslims that there's some concept of a Trinity. Right? To us, Islamic belief is so simple. You find people leaving Christianity, becoming atheists, entering into other religions. You find Christians, they're leaving as, Christianity to become Muslim because of the simplicity of the belief. I think everybody here can agree that as a Muslim, you don't have those confusions that other people have in their religions. Is Jesus God? Is He half God? I was just discussing this with a guy, and basically he told me, I told him that listen, Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, he was a baby at one point in time. He got hungry. He ate. He got sick. Isa alayhi salam came from the place that babies come from. Think about how serious that is, that they're saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came from a place like that. So then he said, oh, because Jesus has two natures. He has a human nature and a divine nature. So then I told him, if you're saying Jesus is completely God, because that's what they say. They say Jesus is completely God. If He's completely God from every aspect, how is He God from every aspect when there's an aspect of Him that is human? Does this make any sense? You can't, how could Jesus, a human being, is totally finite? We're finite. We have a limit in everything. We live, we die, we eat, we get hungry, we're energetic, we get tired. There's a limit to everything. We're not eternal in this life at all. So Jesus, who's God, He's finite, but He's also infinite at the same time. How could something be finite and infinite at the same time? So, and even if you find in the Bible, Jesus fell on His face and He prayed. So obviously for the Christian, when he hears these things, obviously when people don't think about their beliefs, a lot of Muslims don't even think about their beliefs anyway. A lot of Muslims, you ask the average kid who's a Muslim in New York City, why are you a Muslim? Oh, my parents raised me as Muslim. You ask the average Christian, why are you Muslim? Because my parents raised me as Christian. So just because your parents raised you as a religion, that's what you're going to follow? You're going to let that be a reason for you to follow a religion that will dictate so many things in your life. The religion tells you what to do, what not to do. And you're going to just follow religion just because your mommy and your daddy told you? That doesn't make any sense, right? Because if that was the standard of truth, if whatever your parents taught you is truth, that means there is no truth. Because parents teach kids contradicting things. So therefore, you have to have a higher standard. Why are you a Muslim? And obviously, when Christians, when they start to think about their theology, then they start to go here and go there. They start to sway away and they try to go they literally panic and try to find some way to reconcile it, but you can't reconcile it. Right? And that's why you find that there's some early Christians, they said they did not believe that Jesus was equal to God. They believed that Jesus was God, but the Father, Allah, is higher. So there's so many differences that they have in their own beliefs. And Isa alayhi salam prayed in the Bible, right? You know, how, somebody described Isa alayhi salam in the Gospel of Mark as good. He said, don't call me good. The only one that is good is the Father. What did he say? I'm good because I'm the God. I'm God as well. Right? Why did he tell people to pray to God? Why did he pray to God? Why did he fall on his face to pray to God? Obviously, he's not God. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is that the belief, the aqeedah of Muslims is so simple. Right? It's so simple. Right? Everything is for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Right? Everything besides Allah is creation. Simple. Easy to understand. Allah is not part of His creation. Allah is above His throne as He described Himself. I didn't describe Allah like this. He described Himself like this. As away from His creation. Above, the most high, above His creation. That's it. So simple. So easy for somebody to understand that. So Allah commands the Prophet ﷺ to say to them, O Messenger ﷺ, proclaim to the people that my salah, my sacrifice, my life and my death is for Allah, the Lord of everything besides Himself. That's a belief as Muslims. So everything in your being is for Allah. You're created for Allah, by Allah. Right? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously when you make something, when you create a phone, when we make phones, when we make cars, if the car doesn't work, what do? Do you keep it around? No, you don't. You create everything for a purpose. So think about that. You have been designed, you've been created for a purpose. And if you're not fulfilling your purpose, then what are you doing? It's like you're going against the whole purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you. And the fact that He gave you free will is a blessing. He gave you free will and that's a blessing. Right? That you are able to choose and decide to follow the reason in which you're created. And look how amazing that is. It's been 1400 years since the Prophet ﷺ passed away. He's no longer here. But look how self-sustaining this deen is. Every day people are accepting Islam in a whole other content. He was in Mecca. He died in Medina. And over 1,000 years later, people are still following Islam. Nobody has to push people to follow Islam. Nobody has to force them. They're doing it based on their own will. The fastest growing deen, even kuffar, they know this. The fastest growing deen is Islam. Nobody can deny that. Right? Obviously, they say that's because people are being misguided and Muslims are misguided and blah, blah, blah. Right? But we know it's the truth as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us. So your entire life belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your death belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every prayer you make belongs to Allah, nobody else. Every sacrifice you make, that belongs to the Lord of the worlds. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also commands us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dukhulu fi silmi kafa. O you who believe, enter into Islam totally. Not part-time. Not on Sundays where you sing and dance and hop and spin around and then that's your worship and then the whole week you forget about God. No. Islam is not just on Jum'ah. Islam is not just in Ramadan. Right? Ramadan. So the thing is that Islam is a complete deen. And it's not as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forcing us to do a bunch of stuff in our daily lives. As if we don't have any freedom. Allah is giving us guidance. He's giving us guidance to follow. The best example. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the hadal Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the Quran yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. It guides to that which is better and more upright. Right? That's the deen that we're following. So when you realize that every single day your entire body has sadaqah due upon it, that shows you that Islam is a complete religion. Your entire body, your entire life is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what is sadaqah? We mentioned this last week, but let's just repeat it again inshallah ta'ala just so we know the reference. In the Sunnah of Imam At-Tirmidhi, عن جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهم, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, كل معروف صدقة. That every good is sadaqah. Everything that is good is sadaqah. It's not just money, but everything that is good is considered sadaqah. So when you have sadaqah due on every joint in your body, whatever good you do, you're fulfilling that sadaqah. Right? You're fulfilling that sadaqah that's obligatory upon you. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ. And from good, in other words, from sadaqah, أَن تَلْقَى أَخَاكَ بِوَجْهٍ طَلِقٍ. Is that you meet your brother with a beautiful face, with a smiling face, a cheerful face. Right? That you're not all grumpy, like Scrooge and the Grinch all the time. Even though they don't exist. Right? that you look like somebody that people want to be around, right? You don't want to act like somebody that people don't want to be around, right? You want to be somebody that's going to bring cheer to people when they look at your face. And when it comes to sadaqah, now we said that sadaqah could be for yourself and it could be for other people as well. Right? Helping somebody with their bags, helping somebody get in their car, helping an old lady cross the street, or whatever the case is. These are all examples of sadaqah to others. And you also have sadaqah to yourself. In this hadith it's mentioned, to walk to the masjid is sadaqah. The previous hadith, to make dhikr of Allah, is sadaqah. Now which is better? The sadaqah to others or the sadaqah to yourself? The scholars mentioned that the sadaqah to others is better. The sadaqah to others is better. And why? Because in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions helping others first. He says every joint in your body has sadaqah due upon it every single day. When you deal justice between two people, it's sadaqah. When you help somebody get on an animal, it's sadaqah. When you help that person get their bags on the animal, it's sadaqah. And everything good you say is sadaqah. All of these things are things you do to others. Then he mentions in every step you take to the salah is sadaqah. That's for yourself. Look how many examples he gave for other people. Why? Because you're benefiting others and they're getting benefit as well. Right? And that's why when it comes to, knowledge now, when it comes to knowledge, the scholars, they say that after the obligatory deeds, there's nothing more virtuous than knowledge. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said in an authentic hadith that the comparison between the scholar, somebody who has ilm, somebody who has knowledge, compared to a worshipper, somebody who's just praying by themselves. They make dhikr by themselves. Because when somebody's a scholar, they teach other people. They can benefit others. The Prophet ﷺ said that the scholar, the virtue of the scholar compared to the virtue of the worshipper who just worships by himself is like the comparison between the bright full moon on a full moon night, where the moon is full on that night, compared to the other stars that you see. Now, when there's no moon in the sky, could you see the stars? Providing that you're not in New York City, because you can't see any stars around here. But you go to like New Jersey, you go to Connecticut, you go to other places where there's not much light pollution. And you go to those places, when you don't see a full moon, you could see stars in the entire sky. But what happens when the full moon is there? You barely see any stars. Think about how deep this hadith is. The comparison of the scholar, he may not pray as much qiyamul layl. He may not give as much sadaqah, monetary sadaqah. But because of his knowledge of Allah and His Messenger and His deen, and the knowledge that he's teaching people, he can outstrip and outdo the guy who's worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by himself. And the example of that is the bright moon. When the moon is there, it outshines everything. And when there's no moon, only then do you see all of the stars. So that's the virtue of knowledge. And the scholars mentioned that why is knowledge so virtuous? Ibn Jama'ah mentions that the reason why knowledge is so virtuous and so it has that virtue with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because knowledge benefits others. Knowledge is not something that only benefits yourself, it benefits others as well. But when it comes to your salah, you only benefit yourself. When it comes to your dhikr, you only benefit yourself. When it comes to your contemplation and your tadabbur, it only benefits yourself. But knowledge, you can benefit everybody around you. Right? Just think about a khutbah, how much impact could be made in people's life just by hearing khutbah. You see what I'm saying? And that's come from knowledge. Right? You can't teach other people if you don't have knowledge. So that's an example, when it comes to sadaqah, when you do it to others, that's even more virtuous. So whatever you can do for others, it benefits you and it benefits them as well. Now, and as I mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned many examples. Now, the next benefit I want to mention is that never look down on any good. Never look down on any sadaqah, because sadaqah is good. There's a hadith with the Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا. Never look down on any good. And if he says that every good is sadaqah, don't look down on any sadaqah. Monetary sadaqah as well. Don't look down on it, even if it's just $1. Don't feel ashamed. Right? Give $1, give 50 cents. That stuff is going to help out, inshallah ta'ala. Right? So never look down on any good. You should be humble. Think about this. Helping somebody get on their animal, when they're riding their animal, somebody might look at that as a demeaning task. Like I'm a big shot, I don't need to go do that. Let somebody else do that. Let the servants do that. Let the workers do that. I'm a big shot, I'm the boss of the company. Sweep the floor? Who needs to do that? No, sweep the floor. Right? Sweep the floor. Help the people. Serve the people. Right? Don't be arrogant. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, and he was known for this. He was known for helping people. Right? When he would come into Medina, when he would walk in Medina, he would rub the heads of the little boys. And he would give them salams. And he would be nice to them. Nowadays, if somebody did that, he would think that would lower his status among the eyes of the people. But who cares? This is something that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should be humble. So the Prophet ﷺ mentions helping somebody get on their animal. picking up their bags, carrying their bags. Today, somebody would think, oh my God, me carrying bags? No, that's for the lower people, right? My status is too high to do that. But no, do these things, inshallah ta'ala. So never look down on any good. And you never know, it may be because of that one small good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives you of your sins. There's a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that there was in the time of Bani Israel, there was a prostitute. Obviously a prostitute is doing some nasty stuff on a daily basis for money. But a prostitute, some of us may think about this person like, oh my God, this is a filthy, despicable person. This person, Allah will never forgive this person. But you don't know that. This woman, she passed by a well and there was a dog that almost died of thirst. And she took her shoe and she got some water from that well, and in her shoe, you think about how simple this action is. It doesn't take much time. How many minutes is it going to take? 5 minutes just to help an animal? And it's a dog, right? It's a dog, and the majority of scholars mention that dogs are impure. Now, of course, Imam Malik and other scholars, they say that no, the dog is pure, and there's some difference of opinion about that. But the point is that she helped this animal, not even a human being, but she gave the dog water, and then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned فَغُفِرَ لَهَا, that she was forgiven by Allah. So never look down on any good. Look at that, just one good deed. Somebody may think, sister, you won't go to Jannah until you start wearing your hijab, until you start doing this. Not to say that these things you shouldn't do, right? But we're going to look at it as she can never do good that will cause Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive her. But perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's inside of her heart. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's inside of your heart when you do just one small thing, sincerely for Allah Azza wa Jalla, and He forgives you of all of your good, your bad deeds because of that, right? But the flip side is also valid as well. That somebody may do one sin, that they don't care about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that one sin, and because of that one sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nullifies your deeds. Right? So when it comes to your deeds, they do play a big impact on your iman. But at the end of the day, it's your heart. It's your heart. That's important. The deeds are important as well. They're from iman as well. But you must purify this heart, because if this heart is purified, everything else will be purified. We saw that in the hadith, I believe hadith number 6. Okay, hadith number 6, we saw that the Prophet ﷺ mentions that there's a morsel of flesh in the body. If it's sound, the whole body will be sound as well. The next benefit, as we mentioned, a Muslim is a benefit to everybody. A Muslim is a benefit to everybody, Muslim or kafir. So that's when you go to school, people should see, you should be improving the lives of people when you're at school, when you're at work, right? People should see good character from you and learn from you, right? And that's how the believer is benefiting wherever the believer is. Now, there's a hadith. This hadith, okay, the Prophet ﷺ mentions that every joint has sadaqah due upon it, right? There's one deed that you can do every day that will suffice the sadaqah for all of these joints, right? Does anybody know what that deed is? Yeah. Which two sunnahs? After dhuhr? Good. Salatul duha. The prayer after sunrise. The prayer of duha. Duha means the early morning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by the early morning, and He says, "Wal duha." And duha is that time that after the sun is risen and it's early morning, it's bright out, and it's early morning after Fajr time. That's the time of duha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by that time. In other words, you should pay attention to that time. You should be awake during that time, trying to do things that will benefit you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by different times and different things in the Quran to show us the importance of those things. That you should think about these things, right? Contemplate the virtue and the blessing of having these times of the day. And there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim narrated by Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu. Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, he mentions something very similar to what Abu Hurairah mentions here from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that every day, every joint, there's sadaqah due upon those joints. And at the end of that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says in this hadith, وَيُجْزِئُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ رَكَعَتَانِ يَرْكَعُهُمَا مِنَ الضُّحَى. And all of these sadaqahs, all of these examples of charities that are due upon every joint, 2 rak'ahs of duha suffices for all of them. So in other words, if you wake up, you pray your fajr, and then you wait a bit and you pray salatul duha, we're going to talk about what the salah is, but you pray 2 rak'ahs of salatul duha, that suffices of this sadaqah every single day. How long does it take you to pray 2 rak'ahs? 2 minutes? 3 minutes? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ. You guys know what I'm talking about? Right? And it's okay. It's okay to recite these surahs. Bismillah, mashallah. That's good. So every single day, you read 2 short rak'ahs. after sunrise. And we're going to talk about when the time is. But it's so simple, and that suffices of all the sadaqah that's due on your entire body. So easy. So don't think like, oh my God, every single joint I gotta like do. No. Just pray these two rak'ahs of Salatul Duha. Now let's just talk about Salatul Duha. There's a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. Abu Hurairah, we all know Abu Hurairah. He says, "Awsani Khalili sallallahu alayhi wasallam." He says, my best friend. Obviously, he's narrating this after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is dead. But Abu Hurairah told the people after the death of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam that my best friend sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he advised me بثلاث, with three things. صيام ثلاثة أيام من كل شهر, fasting 3 days of every month. Whatever 3 days you fast of every month, this is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he told Abu Hurairah before he died. That listen, Abu Hurairah, fast 3 days every single month. Whether that's a Monday and a Thursday and then a Monday, or whether that's the middle day of the month and that's the best days, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, the white days of the month, right? Those are the best times to do these 3 days, but 3 days in every month. And the second thing is وَرَكَعَتَيِ الضُّحَى, and the 2 rak'ahs of duha. That's what the Prophet told Abu Hurairah before he passed away. وَأَنْ أُوتِرَ قَبْلَ أَنْ أَنَامَ, and that I pray Salatul Witr before I go to sleep. So these are 3 things that the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Hurairah to do, right? To be consistent in. Pray Salatul Duha every morning, fast 3 days every month, and to pray your witr before you go to sleep. So you can pray your witr before you go to sleep, or you can delay it to the end, the last part of the night. So from this hadith, and from the hadith before, we understand that Salatul Duha is 2 rak'ahs. Salatul Duha is 2 rak'ahs. And Salatul Duha is performed just like you perform your sunnah prayers. You know, like how you guys just prayed your sunnah prayers after Isha? Just like that. Silent, 2 rak'ahs, and you pray at that time of the early morning. Now when should it be? The time of Salatul Duha is in the name of the Salah. Duha, it's at the time of Duha. And the scholars mentioned that Duha, this early morning time starts 10 to 15 minutes after sunrise comes in. So we have it on our calendars, alhamdulillah, that makes things very easily. You don't have to look outside and look. I mean, if you could do that, mashallah. But you could look at the time, we have apps that shows the prayer times on our phones, right? You look at that, whatever sunrise is, calculate 10 to 15 minutes later, and then you can pray Salatul Duha. Okay, don't pray like at the time of sunrise, but 10 to 15 minutes after. And Salatul Duha, the time extends up until about 10 minutes before Salatul Dhuhr. So on your calendar, whatever time Salatul Dhuhr comes in, calculate 10 to 15 minutes before and 20 minutes before, and you can pray, you can pray the Salatul Duha up until then. So you pray these 2, and it's not obligatory to pray; it's recommended. Okay, these are the only salawat that are obligatory are the 5 daily prayers. That's it. Salatul Witr is not obligatory, according to the majority of scholars. The Imam Abu Hanifa and other scholars, they mentioned that it is obligatory, but personally, I view that to be a weak opinion. Right? The best opinion is that the only prayers that are obligatory upon you are the 5 daily prayers. Okay? So this is an extra prayer that you can pray. So that's when it comes to the time of the prayer. And we said that the least amount that you can pray the salah is 2 rak'ahs. Now there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم يُصَلِّ الضُّحَى أَرْبَعًا. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she said, he used to pray Salatul Duha 4 rak'ahs. So you could pray 2 and 2. And that would count as your 4 rak'ahs. And then she says, وَيَزِيدُ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ. And he would pray more, however much Allah wills. So she's saying that he would pray 4, and sometimes he would do even more than that. So we know that it's at least 2 rak'ahs. There's another hadith in Sahih Muslim, عن أم هانئ رضي الله عنها. This female sahabi, Hani, she said, صلى ثمان ركعات سبحة الضحى. Okay, this female sahabiya, she said that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed 8 rak'ahs of Salatul Duha. Now, is there any maximum amount of rak'ah? No. Because Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that he would increase whatever Allah wills. So however much you want to pray, inshallah ta'ala, 2s and 2, and do it by 2s. You pray 2 rak'ahs, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then you do it in 2s. Now when it comes to Salatul Duha, which time is the best time to pray Salatul Duha? Is it at the beginning of the time, after sunrise by 10 to 15 minutes, or is it better to delay it until before Dhuhr, 10 to 15 minutes? There's a hadith in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ mentions Salatul Awwabina Hina Tamradul Fisal, that the salah of those who constantly turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a good characteristic to turn to Allah azza wa jal. The Salatul Awwabin, the prayer of those who constantly turn to Allah, that's a good characteristic. We should all want to be like these people. The salah of these people is when the sun starts to get hot. When the young camels, they start to feel the heat of the sun, and that's like a bit before dhuhr. So because of this, the scholars mentioned, because the Prophet ﷺ is praising those who delay the salah until before dhuhr, it's best to pray this salah, salatul duha, before dhuhr. Right? So if you have time and you can delay it up to like 10 to 15 minutes before salatul dhuhr, then that's better. But of course, if you pray salatul duha early, it's perfectly fine. So the reason why we're talking about this particular salah is because when you pray these 2 rak'ahs or more, it suffices of that sadaqah every single day. It's right? It's something easy that you can do. Now, inshallah ta'ala, we're just going to mention a couple more things and then we're done, inshallah. I'm just going to mention 2 principles. Okay, now, when it comes to sadaqah now, okay, is saying something good to somebody, is that an act of worship? Can we find specific evidence for that? In this hadith, it gives us evidence for that. But when it comes to your day-to-day things that you do, right? You brush your teeth, you go to sleep, you work, you eat, you walk around, you talk to your friends. Are all of these things considered worship in their essence? Are they worshiping? Are they considered worship, or are they worldly matters? The worldly matters. When you work, that's not worship. When you eat, that's not worship. When you use the bathroom, that's not worship. When you sleep, that's not worship. When you walk around, when you talk to your friends, you hang out, that's not worship. But it could be worship. It could be worship. And this is a mistake that a lot of people say. This is like a mistake that a lot of people make. They say, oh, akhi, your sleep is worship. Your sleep is not worship. It could be worship with a couple conditions, but it's not worship. Just by you sleeping, that's not worship at all. Is everybody clear on what I'm saying? So day-to-day activities, worldly matters, could become worship. But there are 2 conditions. There are 2 conditions that the scholars mentioned. Number 1, you have to have a good intention. You have to have an intention to please Allah. Okay, you have to have an intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's a problem here. That's not enough. Because, for example, jumping up and down. If you're jumping and doing jumping jacks, is that a worldly matter? That's a worldly matter. So can I just do jumping jacks and intend to please Allah like this? I want to skip rope and please Allah. Is that enough? No. There's another condition. In other words, I can't be like, oh, I'm eating and I'm going to please Allah by eating. Or I'm going to grab this burger and I'm pleasing Allah by eating this burger. No. It doesn't, just because you have an intention doesn't make it worship. There's a second condition. It must lead to something that Allah is pleased with. In other words, when it comes to, let's say you're somebody who's struggling with your weight and you want to lose weight so you could pray salah. Does your exercise become worship? Yes. Why? Because it leads to something that Allah is pleased with. So jumping by itself is not worship. You can't just have a good intention and then that's it. It must lead to something that Allah is pleased with, that you have a text for. Okay, and we mentioned this principle before, that whatever leads to what is recommended becomes recommended. Whatever leads to what is wajib becomes wajib as well. If you need, for example, buying water from the store, is that an act of worship? Not at all. It's a worldly matter. But when I have a good intention and it leads to me making wudu, for example, I'm going to use that water to now make wudu. Now buying that water becomes an act of worship. So worldly matters, this is a very important principle. This is going to help you in life. And we're going to mention a bunch of examples. Worldly matters, the dunya related matters, they have nothing to do with the deen. They become matters of the deen. They become worship with 2 things. When you intend to please Allah, and when they lead, they are a means to fulfilling an objective in the Sharia. And I'm going to give you some examples. When you go to work, is that worship? No. But if you go to work trying to please Allah, trying to make your job halal, right? You want to work in a halal place, right? And you want to provide for your family, which is obligatory, which Allah requires of us, then your work becomes an act of worship. Sleeping, we said sleeping is not an act of worship. But if you have an intention that you know what, I want to go to sleep early, I want to get the amount of rest so that I can pray Fajr. Does Allah want you to pray Fajr? Yes. Is a sleep something that leads to you praying Fajr? Yes, because now you have energy to pray Fajr. You guys know that when you pray and you're so tired, you can't really do it. Right? But if you have a good intention and it leads to something that Allah is pleased with, and that's praying Salatul Fajr in the best manner, then your sleep becomes worship now. Also, when it comes to using the bathroom, could using the bathroom become an act of worship? Think about this. Could using the bathroom become an act of worship? Somebody tell me how. It could. If you have an intention to please Allah and you do it the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught you, Even using the bathroom, you can worship Allah while using the bathroom. Obviously, it's not an act of worship in and of itself, but the way that you do it, the fact that you're following the Prophet ﷺ's guidance while using the bathroom, it's an act of worship. For example, wiping yourself with which hand? The right hand or the left hand? With the left hand, right? Not with the right hand, but the left hand. By you following that, that's an act of worship. By you using water or making sure that you're clean, that's an act of worship. Right? By you wiping at least 3 times, and make sure that when you're wiping, it has to be at least 3 times. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, the Hadith of Salman radiallahu anhu in Sahih Muslim, he said the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from wiping less than 3 times. So whether you're using toilet paper or a leaf or a rock, obviously a smooth rock, right? Then it's at least 3 times. Or you could use the same stone, the same leaf, or the same tissue, you could use it on 3 sides. That's perfectly fine. 3 clean sides. That's fine. Okay, but by following the guidance in the worldly matters now become acts of worship. Is eating by itself an act of worship? No, but if you have an intention to please Allah and you're doing it to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ by eating a third, drinking a third, and leaving a third for air, it becomes worship now. So, wearing your clothes, instead of wearing things that are haram, you wear clothes that Allah has made halal for you and you're staying away from the haram and you have an intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now wearing clothes becomes pleasing to Allah and it becomes an act of worship. So literally your entire life can be sadaqah, can be good for yourself or for others. Is everybody clear on this? So worldly matters. Somebody repeat to me the principle again. Ibrahim, when does worldly matters become worship? Yeah, just say it. It's okay.
I mean, when you intend to please Allah and it leads to an action and it leads to something that's going to please Allah.
Good, right? Very important. You have a good intention. Obviously, all your acts of worship have to be for Allah. That's a given. But it must lead to something that pleases Allah. So here's a question. Let's see who's sleeping. Okay? All right, listen. So I want to spin around like Michael Jackson. I want to spin around like Michael Jackson and say Bismillah and do it for Allah. Is that an act of worship? Bilal, is that an act of worship? It's a worldly matter. I'm doing it to please Allah. I want to spin around like Michael Jackson and sing like him and please Allah. I want to do that to please Allah. It's a worldly matter, but I'm doing it for Allah. Why is it not an act of worship?
Because it doesn't lead you to any act of worship.
Good, because it doesn't lead to any objective that Allah wants you to fulfill. Allah doesn't want you to dance. Right? Is everybody clear on how this works? So it must lead to a shari'i objective. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. But there are 2 questions that I said I was going to address 2 weeks ago. I mentioned that there was 2 questions. The first question is when it comes to medicine. When it comes to medicine now that has alcohol in it. Right? Some medicines, they have alcohol in it. They have a certain amount of alcohol that could cause intoxication. So the scholars, the fiqh councils, they've mentioned that when it comes to medicines that have a certain amount of alcohol in it, if it's a small amount of alcohol that does not cause any intoxication, then it's perfectly fine. And scholars like Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned that if it's like 3%, and other scholars mentioned 5% of alcohol in that particular drug, then it's perfectly fine to use because the effect of the effect of intoxication is no longer present. So it's permissible to use that. Now when it comes to the medicine having a large amount of alcohol now, when it comes to the medicine having a large amount of alcohol where it could cause intoxication, the scholars mentioned that it's only permissible to use that in times of necessity. Obviously, if somebody is in dire need, they're going to die, something is going to happen. There's the principle that the scholars mentioned, and that is الضرورات تبيح المحظورات. الضرورات تبيح المحظورات. That in times of necessity, things that are normally haram become permissible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that a person can eat from the pig if they're in a situation of need, if they're forced to do so without desiring it, right? If a person is on an island stranded and there's only a pig running around and he's got to eat, barbecue him, right? That's what you got to do. Otherwise, you're going to die. You got to have that barbecue. Because if you don't, you're going to die. So if it's a situation of necessity, things that are normally haram become permissible. Okay? Only to alleviate you of the need, the dire need that you have. So for example, let's say somebody's dying and they're like, no doctor, that has alcohol, I'm going to die. No, like you have to take it. You have to take it. It's going to cause you to die, right? Even if it has that amount. Why? Because it's going to save your life. So if there's a necessity, okay, then it could be used. Now when it comes to, and this is a long topic, but inshallah ta'ala that's in brief. I think that answers the question, inshallah. The other question that was asked was that when people asked us at school and work, are we Sunni or Shia? Are we Sunni or Shia? What do we say? Did we say that we're Shia? Is anybody here to say that they're Shia? Okay. Is anybody here say that they're Sunni? Okay, so the thing is, now when it comes to this, right? Listen, you're not obligated as a Muslim. You are not obligated as a Muslim to call yourself anything except a Muslim. It's not an obligation. Nobody can come and tell you, Akhi, you must call yourself. You must say, your name is Bilal. You have to say Bilal as-Salafi. You have to say Bilal as-Sufi. You have to say Bilal as-Sunni. None of that stuff. There's no evidence to oblige upon the people to call themselves a specific name of a group at all. All you have to tell people is, listen, I'm a Muslim. If they want to say, oh, what kind of Muslim? Then you could say, if it means to be Sunni, that I follow the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I'm Sunni. But like I said, it's no obligation. You're under no obligation to tell anybody that you're part of any group or anything or anything like that. You follow the Quran and Sunnah. If that means you're Sunni and that means that you're not Shi'i, then you're Sunni. But you're a Muslim who follows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَأَطِيعُ اللَّهُ وَأَطِيعُ الرَّسُولُ. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. That's my deed. That's what I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. I'm a Muslim, I follow the Quran and Sunnah. Whatever you want to call that, that's on you. Is everybody clear on what I'm saying? Now when it comes to the Shia now, the Shia are many different groups. They have many different beliefs. Some of the Shia, they make takfir. They say most of the Sahaba are kuffar. You hear that there are some Shia sheikhs. You can hear this on YouTube. They say Aisha is a kafira, Abu Bakr is a kafir, and they hate some of the Sahaba. Most of the Sahaba they hate. Not all of them, but a group among them, a huge amount of them, they hate the Sahaba. They especially hate Aisha. Some of them say things like how Aisha, she killed the Prophet ﷺ. Some of them, they say that Abu Bakr took the Khilafah by force, but no, the Sahaba all agreed that Abu Bakr should be the leader. When it comes to the Salah, who did the Prophet ﷺ put to lead the people in prayer? Ali or Abu Bakr? Abu Bakr. A lady came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, O Messenger of Allah, who should we go to when we don't find you? He said, Abu Bakr and Umar. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, in Sunan of Abu Dawud, he says that while the Prophet ﷺ was alive, we would say that the best of the Ummah is Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. So that's how the Sahaba knew that Abu Bakr was the best of the Sahaba. So because of that, he was made the leader. So obviously, this is a long topic to go into what they believe. And listen, you have to have good character towards people. This doesn't mean that you should be bad towards people. Listen, people follow many different things. You should be nice towards them, right? Encouraging towards them to follow Islam and to follow the truth, right? Have that sadaqah towards them in good speech. Be nice to them. Don't be mean, because that's not going to help anybody to follow the truth if you're nasty and acting like a Grinch, right? You got to be nice, right? Be somebody who has good character. So the thing is that when it comes to Shia beliefs, there's a lot of things that we could talk about. Like I said, not all Shia are like this. We can't say that all Shia that they're non-Muslims. No, that's not correct to say every single Shia is a non-Muslim. Some of them, a lot of them, they do have non-Muslim beliefs that take them out of Islam, of course. But you don't say to somebody, I'm a Shi'i, because there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that term. There's a lot of beliefs, false beliefs that come along with that term. So if Sunnah if Sunni means, and it does mean that you follow the Quran and the Sunnah, then that's what you are. But like I said, you're under no obligation to call yourself anything except a Muslim. Is everybody clear on this? Does everybody have any questions? Yes.
Why we can calculate to get the timing of Salah, unlike the timing of the first day of Ramadan?
Okay, so the thing is, there are some scholars, modern day scholars, and like a few scholars of the past who've mentioned that you could do calculations. The thing is that the thing is with the times of the Salah, when it comes to the times of the Salah, those who argue that we could use calculations for Ramadan, they say that it's, some of these people they mention, and I've spoken to some of these sheikhs who hold these views, okay? And they tell me that, they use this as one of the points, is that, listen, if we're doing the calculations for the Salah, then why do we calculate for Ramadan? Everybody can be on the same page. We can calculate in advance, tell people that, listen, it's projected that Ramadan is going to be on this day, and then everybody can be together. Why not? Okay? And that's a view of some of the scholars of today. But the Prophet ﷺ, he linked Ramadan and fasting. He said, Sumu li ru'yati hilal. Fast when you see the moon. And the thing is, the moon sometimes is not consistent. Sometimes it's not consistent from area to area. And this is a whole other different topic now that we're getting into. But the thing is that one could make the argument that it is different. Why? Because every single day, normally the sun comes up at the same time, right? And through experience, we can see that it is consistent, that whatever calculations we're making, it's consistent with when the sun moves in the sky. That's consistent. I mean, if anybody looks at that, I mean, whatever it says on your calendar, when sunrise is going to be, you could look outside and it is sunrise. When it's sunset, you could look outside and you could see it's sunset. So almost always it's accurate. But is it always accurate that every time we calculate when the moon is going to show up, that it does show up? The answer is no. So my opinion is that I don't think we can compare those two things. Is everybody clear on what I'm saying here? Right? So the thing is, when you calculate the prayer times of the day, it's almost always consistent. Did you ever look at your calendar and it says Dhuhr is this time, but did you actually pray in Asr time? No. Providing that you're following a relied upon calendar. We're not talking about some calendar your friend made, right? If you follow some, inshallah ta'ala, mashallah, we have calendars here, you can follow them. They're almost always consistent. But the calculations are not always consistent when it comes to seeing the moon. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, fast when you see the moon. Right? So he didn't link, right? The Prophet ﷺ did not link fasting with calculating anything. It's not consistent with the calculations. So, and that's by experience. How many times have there been calculations that you guys have observed this? There have been calculations, people have started fasting, but nobody has seen any moon. Many times this has happened. But I'm asking you, when have you ever seen a calendar of salah timings where the time outside the sun was not in the place that the calendar said? So when it comes to the sun, it's very easy to predict the times of the sun because it's a daily thing. It's something that happens every single day. But Ramadan on a monthly basis, when it comes to seeing the moon, sometimes you don't see the moon, but every day you see the sun. So it's comparing between two, it's something that's, you can't make qiyas between those two things in my opinion. But like I said, this is an issue that some scholars have difference of opinion in. I mean, listen, the best view is to follow what the Prophet ﷺ told us, but listen, you shouldn't look down or think anybody's a bad Muslim or terrible Muslim because they're following another view. Very important. Don't look at a guy, he's following a calculation or he's following a community and they use calculation. Don't look at that person as a bad Muslim. Oh, he's not following the Sunnah, he's going against the Sunnah and he's a bad Muslim and he's going to Jahannam. No. Right? It's an issue that some scholars, they have difference of opinion in, and we should kind of be tolerant when it comes to these things, inshallah ta'ala. Any other question? Yep. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, can the dua salah be combined? Like for instance, like the intention coming towards the masjid for wudu, and intention for the masjid and stuff like that.
Okay, so you're saying for Salatul Duha?
Dua, yes.
Okay, so for the scholars specifically mentioned that Salatul Duha is a specific prayer. Okay, and because it's a specific prayer that's intended to do for that purpose of Salatul Duha, they said that you can combine it with another specific salah. What I mean by that is, for example, you have Tahiyyat al-Masjid. If you want to combine Tahiyyat al-Masjid with Salatul Duha, you can do that. But when it comes to, combining the Sunnah of Fajr with Salatul, well, you can't really do that, but let's say the Sunnah of another prayer, you want to combine it with Salatul Duha, I think the only prayer that you could possibly do because of the time of Salatul Duha is really the Tahiyyat al-Masjid or Sunnah of Wudu. But if you asked specifically about the Sunnah of Wudu, yes, you can combine Salatul Duha with the Sunnah of Wudu, because the Prophet ﷺ just mentions to pray any 2 rak'ahs after you make wudu. And because Salatul Duha is 2 rak'ahs, it falls under that. So you can pray Salatul Duha and intend to pray those 2 rak'ahs in the same salah for wudu. And you can do that for Tahiyyat al-Masjid as well. Or you can do all 3 of them. Right? I intend to pray Tahiyyat al-Masjid, Sunnah of wudu, but primarily my salah is Salatul Duha. I hope that answers the question, inshallah. And it is a tricky issue because many scholars, they mention different things about different salawat. So the best way to understand this is to ask one person or one teacher about different salawat and if they fall under that category. And different scholars have different opinions as well. Anybody have any other questions? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I'm going to read. Sometimes when you see people do sins openly, we think that we are better than them since we don't do that sin. Is it a part of arrogance? If so, then making jokes on people who do ridiculous sin is totally prohibited then.
What was the last part again?
If so, then making jokes on people who do ridiculous sin is totally prohibited.
Okay. So, now there are a couple of issues in that question. Issue number one is when it comes to, somebody doing a sin openly. I mean, let's talk about some sins that people do openly when it comes to not wearing hijab. That's obligatory. When it comes to shaving, shaving the face for a man, shaving the beard and the mustache. I mean, mustache is another issue that scholars differ on. But, some scholars have mentioned ijma', that there's consensus of all of the scholars that it's haram to shave the beard. So that's an example of something that somebody can be doing publicly, and that's very common. That's very common. Now, the thing is, nobody should ever say that they're better than anybody. That's first. Don't ever say that you're better than anybody. Why? Because that's an example of arrogance. You don't know how that person is going to end up, right? Don't criticize that person and say, oh, that person is a bad Muslim. You don't know if they're striving or not, right? Look at the hadith of that prostitute. Right? Obviously, don't look down on people. You don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows in their heart, that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may forgive all of their sins because of. And because you may have arrogance in your heart, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, whoever has an atom's weight of arrogance will not enter Jannah at the beginning. So which is worse? So the thing is, you can't look at people, look down on people ever. Don't ever do this. Don't ever think that no matter what you've gained of knowledge, no matter what you've gained of Islam and how long you've been a Muslim, who cares? You don't even know if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted that in the first place. So don't be arrogant, thinking that you're some type, saint floating around like an angel. Right? You have sins like everybody else. And you may look down on one sin that because of that one sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nullifies all your deeds because of. So you don't want to play around with arrogance, especially because it's very dangerous. You're literally playing with fire. So don't look down on anybody. The other issue is when it comes to making fun of people, you should never make fun of people. Now the thing is, there's a difference between making fun of specific practices, especially when it comes to bid'ah. Some scholars mention that when it comes to making fun of bid'ah, to show people how silly it is, if there's a benefit in doing it, then it's permissible. But obviously it's best not to make jokes and to refute things based on evidence and knowledge. That's the best way that you should push people away from doing wrong things. Not to show people, ha ha ha, look at this, how funny it is, so you shouldn't do it. No, try to show them why it's bad using evidences, not laughter and jokes. Right? This is not a deen of making jokes, right? Obviously, it's permissible to make permissible jokes, but when it comes to now making fun of bad things, some scholars mention that when it's the general practice, it could be permissible to laugh about it or make fun of it when it comes to bid'ah, if there's a benefit in that. And like I said, it's best to leave it off, period. But there's a difference between that, laughing or making a joke about a general practice and making a joke about a specific person. That is backbiting. If you do it behind the back, I don't care what the person is doing. Don't make fun of anybody behind their back. Don't laugh at a brother because of a sin that he's doing, right? So ghiba, backbiting somebody, is mentioning your brother in a way that he doesn't like. You don't know, that brother may be striving and struggling to stop that sin that he's doing in public. You have no idea what's inside of his heart, and he keeps making istighfar. He keeps following up a bad deed with a good deed, and Allah is removing those sins from him. You don't know that, right? So the thing is, perhaps it's an addiction that the person has. Never judge anybody. Never look down on anybody. So the thing is, you can't make fun of somebody. And there's a hadith, some scholars mention that it is weak, that if anybody, they make fun of their brother. There's a hadith in Sunan of Imam Tirmidhi. Some scholars mention it's da'if, other scholars mention that it could be raised to the level of hasan. But when it comes to this hadith, the Prophet he says that whoever man ayyara akhahu bidam, that whoever criticizes his brother or laughs or makes fun of his brother or puts his brother down because of a sin, he will not die until he falls into the same sin. Like I said, it's not an authentic hadith, but it's just to show us that some scholars, they narrate these hadiths to show us that you shouldn't make fun of anybody because of any sin. You should have hope. You should try to encourage the brother. Don't laugh at the brother. He's trying to stop the sin. Advise the brother. Maybe he doesn't know it's haram, but you know. Right? So hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, that answered the question. There was a couple things in that question. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. We'll continue for next time. Oh yes, and as I mentioned, we have our program New Leaf. We also have a mentorship system where we're going to assign the new converts to mentors, people that are going to help them answer their questions and kind of be there for them when they need that. And as I mentioned before, this is needed. So inshallah ta'ala, just share it around with your friends. You may not benefit from it, but it's sadaqah. share the benefit, share the khair with others. Perhaps they may benefit from it as well, inshallah ta'ala. So, and then of course we have our appeal, our urgent appeal of 229 tons of steel. The program is eMAN of steel. We're trying to raise as much funds as we can for the expansion project. We have these banners around. We have the information up there. You can go to the website that's posted. You can send an email. You can give us a call if you would like to donate. And spread this around to your family, inshallah ta'ala. We're trying to raise this money as much as possible because it's going to affect the masjid, it's going to affect the school and other aspects of this organization. And this is a benefit for everybody. I mean, alhamdulillah, before this place, was a place where people would worship Isa alayhi salam. They worship Jesus, but now look, 10, 15, 20 years later, we're worshiping Allah, right? And we're teaching we're learning and teaching the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us. So, you never know what good can come out of, this. You may not be around to enjoy it, but people will benefit from the center. And inshallah ta'ala is going to be the first 60,000 square foot center in New York City. That's huge. So inshallah ta'ala, that's going to allow us to do a lot more programs, a lot more things that will benefit the community, inshallah ta'ala. فجزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.